The colony ship Harvest Dawn had crashed on 442 almost 100 years ago. What started as a terrible accident had become home for 3 generations of humans. They built houses from the strange purple trees. They grew food in the alien soil. They made a life on a world that was never meant to be theirs. The planet was beautiful in a strange way. The forests were violet and silver. The mountains were made of crystal that sang when the wind blew through them. 2 moons hung in the sky every night, one blue and one gold. The humans had learned to love this strange place because they had no choice. Earth was too far away. This was home now. In the middle of the colony lived a girl named Myra. She was 8 years old, with messy black hair and dirt under her fingernails. Her mother was the head botanist, which meant she was in charge of growing things. Myra followed her mother everywhere, watching her plant seeds and water crops and coax life from the alien ground. Myra loved growing things more than anything else. She had her own small garden behind their house. She grew tomatoes from earth seeds and strange blue vegetables that were native to this world. She talked to her plants every day. She believed they could hear her, even though her mother said that was not scientific. One afternoon, Myra went exploring beyond the fence that surrounded the colony. She was not supposed to go there alone, but she was curious. The ridge beyond the fence was covered in strange rocks and minerals that sparkled in the sunlight. Myra liked to collect pretty stones and bring them home. That day, she found something different. It was half buried in the clay near a cluster of crystal formations. At first, Myra thought it was just another rock, but when she dug it out, she saw that it was perfectly smooth, almost like someone had polished it. It was about the size of her head, heavy but not too heavy for her to carry. The surface was black like the night sky, but when she tilted it in the light, she could see faint patterns beneath the surface. They looked almost like veins, or maybe like the lines on a leaf. Myra sat down and studied the object for a long time. She had never seen anything like it. The patterns seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. The stone felt warm in her hands, warmer than it should have been sitting in the shade. She decided it must be a seed. This made perfect sense to Myra. She had seen seeds from Earth that looked like rocks. Her mother had shown her coconuts and avocado pits and other seeds that were hard and strange. Maybe this was a seed from one of the giant crystal trees that grew on the distant mountains. Maybe no one had ever tried to grow one before. Myra carried the stone home in her arms. It was heavy, and she had to stop and rest several times. But she did not mind. She was excited. She imagined growing a crystal tree in her garden. She imagined it being the most beautiful thing anyone had ever seen. When she got home, she found an old clay pot in the storage shed. She filled it with the best soil from her garden. Then she placed the stone carefully in the center and patted the dirt around it. She put the pot on her windowsill where it would get the morning sun. Then she went to get water. She poured the water slowly over the stone, watching it run down the smooth surface and soak into the soil. She leaned close and whispered to it, "Hello, little seed. I am going to take care of you. You are going to grow into something wonderful. I just know it." Her mother came home and saw the pot on the windowsill. She smiled and asked what Myra was growing. Myra explained about the seed she had found on the ridge. Her mother looked at the stone and raised her eyebrows but said nothing discouraging. She believed in letting children learn through experience. "Well," her mother said, "we will see what happens. Remember to be patient. Some seeds take a long time to grow." Myra nodded seriously. She understood patience. She had waited 3 months for her tomatoes to turn red last year. Every morning after that, Myra woke up early and watered her stone. She talked to it while she poured the water. She told it about her day, about her friends, about the things she was learning in school. She told it about Earth, even though she had never been there. She told it stories her grandmother had told her, about oceans and forests and animals that no longer existed. Every evening, she watered it again. She said good night to it before she went to sleep. The other children in the colony thought she was strange. They laughed at her for watering a rock. But Myra did not care. She believed in her seed. She knew that sometimes things needed love and patience before they would show you what they really were. Days passed, then weeks. The stone did not change. It did not sprout or crack or show any sign of life. Myra's mother gently suggested that maybe it was just a rock after all. Maybe some things were not meant to grow. But Myra kept watering it. She kept talking to it. She kept believing. What Myra did not know, what no one on the planet could possibly know, was that the stone was not a seed at all. It was not from this world. It was not even from this time. 60,000 years ago, a dying civilization had placed it on that ridge. They were called the Eth, and they were the last of the great dragons that had once ruled the galaxy. They were beings of impossible power, creatures that could bend reality with their thoughts. But they were dying, hunted to extinction by empires that feared them. The last Eth had hidden her final egg on a distant world, hoping that someday someone would find it. But the egg would not hatch for just anyone. It needed something specific, something rare, something that had become almost extinct in the cold and ancient galaxy. It needed pure kindness. It needed someone who would care for it without expecting anything in return. It needed love given freely to something that seemed worthless. For 60,000 years the egg had waited. Many creatures had found it some had tried to break it open. Some had tried to study it. Some had thrown it away. None of them had simply cared for it. Until Myra. On the 14th night, while Myra slept peacefully in her bed, the egg began to warm. Deep inside, something ancient stirred. The patterns beneath the surface started to glow with soft golden light. The waiting was almost over. Myra woke up because of the light. It was the middle of the night, but her room was glowing. She sat up in bed and rubbed her eyes, thinking maybe she was dreaming. But she was not dreaming. The light was real, and it was coming from the pot on her windowsill. The stone was changing. Myra got out of bed slowly and walked toward the window. She was not afraid. She was curious. The stone was cracking, but not like a normal rock would crack. Lines of golden light were spreading across its surface like tiny rivers. The light was warm and soft, like sunlight through clouds. She stood there and watched as the cracks grew wider. Pieces of the shell began to fall away, revealing something underneath, something alive, something that glowed from within. The last piece of shell fell, and Myra saw what had been hiding inside. It was a creature. It was small, no bigger than a cat, but it did not look like any animal Myra had ever seen. Its body was covered in scales that looked like hammered silver. It had wings folded against its back, thin and delicate like dragonfly wings, but somehow deeper, as if they went somewhere Myra could not see. Its eyes were large and dark, filled with light that seemed to come from very far away. The creature looked at Myra. Myra looked at the creature. Something passed between them in that moment, something that neither of them could explain. It was like finding a piece of yourself that you did not know was missing. "Hello," Myra said softly. "I am sorry, I thought you were a seed." The creature made a sound. It was not quite a chirp and not quite a word. It was something in between, something that went straight to Myra's heart and made her feel warm and safe. The creature climbed out of the broken shell and walked across the windowsill toward her. Myra held out her hands and the creature climbed into them. It was warm, almost hot, but it did not burn her. It smelled like rain falling on sun-heated stones. It curled up in her palms and looked up at her with those ancient, starlit eyes. "I am going to call you Pebble," Myra said, "because I found you when you were just a little pebble." Pebble made that sound again, and Myra knew somehow that he liked the name. She did not wake her mother that night. She sat on her bed with Pebble in her lap, petting his smooth scales and talking to him until the sun came up. She told him everything about herself, about her life, about her dreams. Pebble listened to every word. When morning came, Myra's mother found them together. She screamed and dropped her coffee cup. The sound brought neighbors running. Within an hour, the whole colony knew that something impossible had happened. The scientists came first. They brought scanners and cameras and equipment that Myra did not understand. They wanted to take Pebble away to study him, but when they reached for him, he hissed and smoke came from his nostrils. They stepped back quickly. The colony's database had old records from Earth, information that the original colonists had brought with them. The scientists searched through everything until they found a match. The creature was called a Eth in old records. On Earth, in ancient myths and legends, creatures like this had been called dragons. But dragons were supposed to be stories. They were not supposed to be real. The records said that the Eth had been the most powerful beings in the galaxy millions of years ago. They could shape planets with their will. They could fly through space without ships. They could live for thousands of years. But they had been hunted to extinction long before humans had even existed. And now the last one had hatched in Myra's bedroom, because she had watered it like a houseplant. The colony's leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. They argued for hours about what to do. Some wanted to kill the creature before it grew too large to control. Some wanted to keep it locked up and study it. Some wanted to send a message to other human colonies and ask for help. They were all afraid. They had read the old records. They knew what dragons could do when they were fully grown. A single Eth could destroy cities. A single Eth could crack moons in half. How could they possibly control something like that? They decided to take the creature away from Myra. It was too dangerous, they said. She was just a child. She did not understand what she was dealing with. The security team went to Myra's house that afternoon. They brought tranquilizer guns and containment equipment. They thought it would be easy. The creature was still small. How hard could it be? Months passed on the colony world, and everything changed. Pebble grew quickly. By the time Myra turned 9 years old, he was no longer small enough to sit on her shoulder. He was the size of a horse, with scales that had darkened from silver to deep gray. His wings had grown wide and strong, though he rarely used them. He preferred to stay close to Myra, walking beside her like a loyal dog. The colony had learned to live with him. At first, people were terrified. They would run inside their houses when they saw him coming. They would whisper and point and keep their children away. But Pebble never hurt anyone. He never even threatened anyone. He was gentle and patient, and slowly people began to understand. Pebble helped with the work around the colony. His claws could dig through rock and soil faster than any machine. He helped the farmers clear new fields for planting. He helped the builders move heavy stones for construction. When winter came and the temperatures dropped below freezing, he would breathe warm air into the greenhouses to keep the plants alive. His fire could melt steel, but he never burned anything that Myra cared about. The children of the colony were the first to accept him completely. They were not as afraid as the adults. They saw a big, strange creature who liked to play games and give rides and make funny sounds when he was happy. They would climb on his back and slide down his tail and hide behind his wings during games. Pebble was always careful with them, always gentle, always aware of how small and fragile they were compared to him. Myra and Pebble were together every moment of every day. They had a connection that no one could explain. Myra always knew where Pebble was, even when he was on the other side of the colony. She knew when he was hungry, when he was tired, when he was happy or sad. Pebble knew the same things about her. If she fell down and scraped her knee, he would appear within seconds, no matter how far away he had been. He would wrap his body around her and make soft sounds until she felt better. The scientists studied this bond from a distance. They took measurements and wrote reports and had long discussions about what they were seeing. They concluded that it was not telepathy, not exactly. It was something deeper. It was as if Myra and Pebble shared the same heart, the same feelings, the same soul. "It makes no scientific sense," one researcher said. "But then again, nothing about this creature makes scientific sense." Pebble broke every rule of physics that humans understood. He was too heavy to fly, but he flew anyway. His fire burned without fuel. His scales absorbed radiation that should have been deadly. He seemed to exist partly outside of normal space and time. When he moved, sometimes he seemed to skip from one place to another without crossing the distance between. The old records from Earth called creatures like him gods. The humans of the colony were beginning to understand why. One day, Myra asked her mother why Pebble had hatched for her and not for anyone else. The egg had been on the planet for 60,000 years. Many creatures must have found it during that time. Why had it waited for a human girl who thought it was a seed? Her mother thought about this question for a long time before answering. The old records say that Eth do not bond with the strong or the powerful, she said. They bond with the kind. Their whole species evolved to find compassion, real compassion, the kind that expects nothing in return. Myra did not fully understand. Her mother tried to explain. You watered that stone for 2 weeks, you talked to it, you believed in it, you loved it even though it gave you nothing back. You did not want anything from it, you just wanted to help it grow. But anyone would do that, Myra said. Her mother smiled sadly. No, sweetheart, most people would not. Most people would have given up after a few days. Most people would have thrown the stone away when it did not sprout. Most people do not pour love into things that seem worthless. Myra thought about this. She looked out the window at Pebble, who was playing with a group of children in the field outside. He was letting them climb all over him while he pretended to be a mountain. So I am special, Myra asked. All humans are special in that way, her mother said. We love things that cannot love us back. We talk to plants and name our machines and cry when stars die. We are foolish that way. But maybe that foolishness is what makes us wonderful. The colony's scientists began to research this idea. They looked at how humans behaved compared to other intelligent species that had been recorded in the old Earth databases. They found something interesting. Humans were the only known species that routinely formed emotional bonds with creatures that could not reciprocate. Humans kept pets. Humans named their cars and ships. Humans talked to their houseplants and felt sad when their robots broke down. No other intelligent species in the recorded history of the galaxy did these things. It was irrational. It was inefficient. It was a waste of emotional energy. But maybe, the scientists thought, it was also the most powerful thing in the universe. The Eth had evolved to seek out pure kindness. They had searched the galaxy for billions of years, looking for beings who could love without expecting love in return. They had found very few. Most intelligent species became cold and practical as they grew older. They learned to measure the value of everything. They forgot how to care for things that could not pay them back. Humans had not forgotten. Humans might never forget. We may be the only species in the galaxy capable of waking them, one scientist wrote in her report. We may be the only ones foolish enough or good enough to pass their test. Myra did not care about any of this. She did not think of herself as special or important. She just loved her friend. She loved the way he curled up beside her bed at night. She loved the way he rumbled when he was happy. She loved the way he looked at her as if she was the most precious thing in the universe. And Pebble loved her back in his ancient and impossible way. He had waited 60,000 years for someone like her. He would have waited 60,000 more. But now he was awake, and he was growing, and soon the galaxy would learn that the last Eth had found his home among the strangest and kindest species in the universe. The humans had no idea what was coming. Neither did anyone else. The ships came on Myra's 10th birthday. It was supposed to be a happy day. The whole colony had gathered to celebrate. There was cake made from the blue vegetables that grew on this world. There were presents wrapped in cloth. The children were playing games while the adults talked and laughed. Pebble was lying in the middle of everything, letting the younger kids decorate his scales with ribbons. Then the sky went dark. Everyone looked up. The sun was still there, but something was blocking it. Something huge and black, descending through the clouds like a nightmare made solid. Then another appeared, and another. Soon there were 12 massive ships hanging over the colony, each one larger than the entire settlement. The ships were made of something that looked like black glass. They had no visible engines, no windows, no markings. They simply floated there, silent and terrible, casting shadows that swallowed the light. Pebble stood up slowly. He was the size of a small building now, his scales dark as coal, his eyes burning with inner fire. He positioned himself between the ships and the colonists, wings spread wide. A low rumble came from his chest, deep enough to shake the ground. The message came through every communication device in the colony at once. We are the hegemony. We have ruled this sector of space for 12,000 years. We have detected the energy signature of a ETH on this world. You will surrender the creature to us immediately. If you cooperate, your colony will be permitted to continue existing as a labor resource for our empire. If you refuse, we will destroy everything. The colonists were frozen with fear. They had known, somewhere in their minds, that humanity was not alone in the universe. The old records talked about other species, other civilizations, but they had never expected to meet any of them. They were farmers and scientists, not soldiers. They had no weapons, no defenses, no way to fight. The colony's leader tried to respond. His voice shook as he spoke into the communication device. Please, we are just a small colony. We mean no harm to anyone. We did not know the creature was significant. If you want him, you can. No. Everyone turned. Myra was standing up, her small hands clenched into fists. She walked toward the center of the colony, toward the space between the settlement and the massive ships. Pebble followed her, his footsteps making the earth tremble. Myra, stop, her mother called out. Please, sweetheart, let the adults handle this. But Myra did not stop. She kept walking until she was standing in the open field, facing the ships, with Pebble towering beside her. She was a tiny figure next to his massive form. She looked like an ant standing next to a mountain. He is not yours, Myra said. Her voice was small, but somehow it carried. Somehow everyone could hear her, even the beings on the ships high above. He was never yours. You do not own something just because you are stronger. That is not how it works. A new voice came through the communication system. It was cold and cruel, with a hissing quality that made humans shiver. Foolish child, the ETH belonged to us. We hunted them. We destroyed them. We kept their eggs as trophies for. This one was stolen from us long ago, but we have found it at last. You cannot stop us from reclaiming what is ours. He is not a trophy, Myra said. He is my friend, his name is Pebble, and I will not let you take him. There was laughter from the ships. It was an ugly sound, mechanical and cold. Little human, you have no choice. Your weapons cannot scratch our shields. Your colony is defenseless. We could burn you all to ashes with a single shot. Stand aside or die with the beast. Myra did not move. Pebble lowered his head until his eye was level with hers. They looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them, a silent conversation that no one else could hear. Then Myra turned back to face the ships. You heard him before. You and others like you. You hunted his people. You killed them all. You did it because you were afraid of what they could do. She paused. But he is not afraid of you, and I am not afraid of you either. The commander was done talking. He gave the order to fire. Beams of energy lanced down from the 12 ships. They were bright enough to blind, powerful enough to crack continents. The colonists screamed and covered their eyes, certain that they were about to die. But they did not die. The beams stopped in the air, halfway between the ships and the ground. They hung there, frozen, like bolts of lightning captured in ice. They made no sound. They did not move. Pebble had not breathed fire. He had not raised his wings. He had simply decided that the energy would not reach Myra, and reality had obeyed. Slowly, the frozen beams dissolved into nothing. Sparkles of light drifted down like snow and disappeared. Then Pebble spoke. It was not sound. It was not words. It was meaning, pure meaning, transmitted directly into the minds of every living being in the system. Humans and alike heard the message, felt the message, understood the message in the core of their beings. This child gave me water when I was stone. She gave me love when I was nothing. She gave me kindness when I had no way to thank her. She is my purpose. Her people are my people. This world is my home. You may leave this place and never return, or you may cease to exist. There is no other choice. Silence. The ships hung in the air, unmoving. The colonists held their breath. Myra stood perfectly still, her hand resting on Pebble's leg, her heart beating steady and calm. They had ruled their sector of space for 12,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had destroyed species that stood against them. They had feared nothing in all that time. But they had also hunted the Eth to extinction. They knew, better than anyone, what these creatures could do. They had seen planets broken in half. They had seen stars extinguished. They had seen reality itself bend and twist under the will of an angry dragon. And this one was not just any Eth. This one had found something to protect. This one had found love. The ships turned, slowly at first, then faster. They rose up through the atmosphere back into the darkness of space. One by one they disappeared, jumping away to wherever they had come from. They did not look back. Myra watched them go. She was shaking now, her legs weak, her heart finally allowing itself to be afraid. But she did not fall. Pebble curled around her, his massive body forming a protective shell, his warmth surrounding her like a blanket. "Good job, Pebble," she whispered. "I knew you could do it." Pebble made a soft sound, the same sound he had made when he first hatched, the sound that went straight to her heart. The colonists slowly emerged from their hiding places. They looked at the sky, at the space where the terrible ships had been. They looked at Myra and Pebble, the child and the dragon, standing together in the field. No one said anything. There was nothing to say. The universe had just learned that humanity had a protector. And humanity had just learned that kindness could be the most powerful force in existence. The story spread across the galaxy like fire. The hegemony had ruled their sector for 12,000 years. They had never retreated from anything. They had never shown fear. But they had fled from a small human colony because of an 8-year-old girl and her dragon. Other empires heard the news. Other species learned what had happened. They sent ships to observe, to investigate, to understand. They kept their distance from the colony world, afraid of what the Eth might do, but they watched. Everyone watched. And they learned something that changed everything. The last Eth had not been awakened by power or by magic or by ancient rituals. It had been awakened by a child who had watered a rock because she thought it was a seed. It had been awakened by 2 weeks of kindness given to something that could not say thank you. The older species of the galaxy had forgotten how to do such things. They had grown cold and efficient over millions of years. They measured everything, calculated everything, expected returns on every investment of energy and emotion. They did not waste love on things that could not love them back. But humans did. The galactic observers began to study humanity more closely. They watched how humans treated animals, keeping creatures called dogs and cats and birds in their homes, feeding them and talking to them and crying when they died. They watched how humans named their machines, giving personal names to their ships and vehicles and tools, treating them almost like friends. They watched how humans talked to plants, to stars, to the empty air. It was irrational. It was foolish. It was completely without practical benefit. It was also beautiful. Myra grew up, she had to. The galaxy knew about her now, about the girl who had woken the last dragon. Ships came from distant stars carrying diplomats and scientists and curious observers. They all wanted to meet her, to understand her, to learn how she had done what should have been impossible. Myra handled it with the same quiet strength she had shown on the day they came. She met with the visitors. She answered their questions. She explained again and again that there was no secret. She had simply cared for something that needed caring for. Anyone could do that. Anyone who was willing to try. Most of the visitors did not understand. They came from species that had evolved beyond such simple emotions. They could not imagine giving love to something without expecting something in return. They looked at Myra and Pebble with confusion, sometimes with fear, often with something that might have been envy. When Myra was 18 years old, she became the first human ambassador to the wider galaxy. It was not a title she asked for. It was simply what she was. She was the bridge between her small, strange, kind species and the vast cold universe beyond. Pebble went with her, of course. He had stopped growing by then, having reached his final form. He was enormous now, large enough to carry buildings on his back, large enough to fly through space without any ship to protect him. His scales were black as the void between stars, and his eyes held the light of ancient suns. But when he looked at Myra, he was still the same creature that had climbed into her hands on that first morning. He was still her Pebble. He still made that soft sound when she scratched behind his ears. Together, they traveled to distant worlds. They discovered things that the cold, old species of the galaxy had overlooked for millions of years. There were other sleeping things out there, seeds that needed singing to before they would sprout, crystals that yearned for company before they would shine, ancient machines that had shut down eons ago, waiting for someone to talk to them with genuine warmth, technologies that responded only to wonder, to joy, to love. Humanity found these things because humanity was foolish enough to try. They sang to seeds because it made them happy. They talked to crystals because it felt right. They treated machines with kindness because that was how they treated everything. And the sleeping things woke up. One by one, wonders that had been lost for millions of years came back to life. The galaxy began to change. Color returned to places that had been gray and dead. Music filled spaces that had been silent. The cold, old universe warmed just a little as humanity spread their foolish, irrational kindness to every corner of the stars. The older species watched this happen with mixed feelings. Some were grateful. Some were afraid. Some began to remember what they had lost over their long, careful evolution. Some began to try, awkwardly and uncertainly, to be kind again. Myra lived a long life. Pebble made sure of that, sharing his impossible longevity with the girl who had given him water when he was nothing but stone. She saw many things. She did many things. She helped many people and creatures and beings of all kinds. But she never forgot where she came from. She never forgot the small colony on the purple planet, the clay pot on the windowsill, the simple act of pouring water on a rock and believing it could grow. When people asked her what humanity's greatest gift was, she always gave the same answer. "We water rocks," she would say with a smile. "We do not know if they will grow. We do not care if they will grow. We just water them anyway because that is what you do with things that might be seeds. You give them a chance. You give them love. You believe in them even when believing is foolish." The old species of the galaxy had forgotten how to be foolish. They had grown too wise, too careful, too practical. They had lost the ability to hope for things that were unlikely, to love things that could not love them back, to pour their hearts into uncertain soil. Humanity had not lost these things. Humanity might never lose these things. And so humanity became something unexpected in the ancient, tired universe. They became gardeners of the impossible. They became wakers of sleeping wonders. They became the species that found magic in places where everyone else had stopped looking. All because a little girl had watered a rock. All because she had loved something that seemed worthless. All because she had believed. The story of Myra and Pebble was told for thousands of years after that. It became a legend, then a myth, then something like a prayer. Parents told it to their children across 100 worlds. Teachers taught it in schools on distant stars. The message was always the same. Be kind to things that cannot thank you. Love things that seem unlovable. Water the rocks in your life, even when everyone tells you that rocks cannot grow. Because you never know what might be sleeping inside them. You never know what might be waiting to wake up. And in a universe that had grown old and cold and cynical, that simple, foolish, wonderful human kindness was the most powerful force that had ever existed. It was the force that woke dragons. It was the force that changed everything. It was the force that made humanity, for all their flaws and foolishness, something very close to magic. And it all started with a girl who poured water on a rock, thinking it was a seed. She was right. It was a seed. It was the seed of something wonderful. But when they arrived, they found Myra sitting on her front porch with Pebble curled around her shoulders. The little dragon's eyes were open and watching. There was something in those eyes that made the security team stop walking. "His name is Pebble," Myra said. Her voice was calm and clear. "And he is not going anywhere." The team leader tried to explain. He said it was for her own safety. He said the creature was dangerous. He said she was too young to understand. Pebble lifted his head and looked at the man. Just looked at him. The man felt suddenly cold, as if something vast and ancient was staring into his soul. He took a step backward without meaning to. "He is my friend," Myra said. "I woke him up. I took care of him. He trusts me. If you try to take him away, you will make him sad, and I do not think you want to make him sad." The security team looked at each other. They looked at the little dragon with his silver scales and his impossible eyes. They looked at the 8-year-old girl who sat there without any fear. They went back to report that the situation was more complicated than expected. Over the next few days, the colony's leaders tried other approaches. They sent scientists to talk to Myra. They sent counselors. They sent teachers. Everyone tried to convince her that giving up the dragon was the right thing to do. Myra listened politely to all of them. Then she said no. She understood that they were scared. She understood that Pebble was different and strange and powerful. But she also understood something that the adults seemed to have forgotten. Pebble had been alone for a very long time. He had been waiting in the dark for 60,000 years. He had woken up because someone had been kind to him. If they took him away now, if they locked him up or hurt him, what would that teach him about the world? What would that teach him about people? "He needs someone to love him," Myra said to the colony's leader. "That is all he has ever needed, and I am going to be that person, whether you like it or not." The leader looked at the small girl with the dragon on her shoulder. He saw the determination in her eyes. He saw the way the creature watched him, calm but alert. He decided that maybe, just this once, they should let a child lead the way.